Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolutely epic story. How did Microsoft Windows, a product that started out as, let's be honest, a late failed copycat, end up becoming the undisputed king of personal computing? It's an amazing tale of rivalry, pure strategy, and a vision that literally changed the world.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 1979. And our story doesn't start in a garage, like you might think. No, it starts at this legendary research lab called Xerox PARC. And it's here that two young guys, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, both saw something that completely blew their minds. They glimpsed the future of computing, and it looked absolutely nothing like the clunky, complicated command lines everyone was used to.
So what did they see? Well, it was the graphical user interface, or GUI. The idea that you could just use a mouse to click on little pictures and windows instead of typing out all these cryptic commands. And for both Jobs and Gates, it was this massive aha moment. They knew right then and there, this was the key. This was how you get computers out of the hands of tech experts and into every single home and office.
All right, Act 1, the pioneer. Apple forges the first path. Now, both guys saw the future, right? But one of them moved way, way faster. Before Microsoft could even really get going on its empire, Apple was already out there, forging the path, with a first attempt that was, well, brilliant, but also deeply flawed.
And Apple's move was just decisive. Look, people call it theft, but it was way more strategic than that. It was a complete knowledge transfer. See, Xerox made a deal to invest in Apple, and in return, they basically opened the doors and let Steve Jobs have a look around. And Jobs, man, he didn't just take notes on the ideas, he hired the talent. He brought over key engineers like Larry Tesler, the guy who helped invent copy and paste for crying out loud, to come and build Apple's vision.
And this slide really shows you a company learning from its mistakes like in real time. So in 1983, they launched the Lisa. Technologically, it was incredible, but the price, almost $10,000. It was a complete commercial disaster. But then just 1 year later, they released the Macintosh. It was simpler, way cheaper, and it was aimed right at everyday people. And that was the landmark success that really changed everything.
And boy, did they launch it with a bang. You've probably heard of this, their legendary Super Bowl ad. It positioned Apple as this rebellious hero, smashing the Orwellian big brother of the computing world, which at the time was IBM. The message was so clear: the future of the personal computer is here, and it's not about control, it's about liberation.
Okay, Act 2, the underdog's response, Microsoft's chaotic scramble to catch up. So, you've got Apple leading this massive GUI revolution. What's Microsoft doing? Well, they were the underdog, and believe me, they were scrambling to catch up.
You have to remember, at this time, Microsoft's big moneymaker was MS-DOS. And yeah, it was powerful, but it was also a total dead end. It was intimidating, super limited, and it was all just text on a black screen. Bill Gates knew, that with the Macintosh out in the world, the days of the command line were officially numbered.
So, Microsoft's first plan, it wasn't revolutionary at all. It was actually brutally practical. Instead of building a whole new operating system from the ground up, they decided to just build a graphical shell. Basically, a pretty face that would sit right on top of good old MS-DOS. The goal was simple: make it look friendly and make sure it worked on the millions of PCs that were already out there.
And what happened next was just total chaos. In a move to get ahead of everyone, Microsoft announced Windows in 1983. Problem was, they hadn't even designed it yet. It was a super bold move that completely backfired. The project fell into what we'd call development hell. They missed deadline after deadline, the whole thing spiraled out of control, and Microsoft ended up with a huge PR crisis for basically promising vaporware, a product that didn't even exist.
So when Windows 1.0 finally came out in late 1985, a full 2 years after they announced it, there was a huge disappointment. It was so clunky. You couldn't even overlap the windows. They just tiled side by side. And it needed so much power for the computers of the time. You put it next to the sleek, elegant Macintosh, and it just felt primitive. Commercially, it was a total dud.
Okay, Act 3, the turning of the tide. Strategy trumps innovation. Now this is where the story gets really good. The total failure of Windows 1.0, it didn't stop Microsoft, not even close. In fact, it just set the stage for one of the most famous, most intense confrontations in the entire history of tech. So when Steve Jobs got a look at where Microsoft was going with the next versions of Windows, he was, to put it mildly, furious. He famously yelled, "They just ripped us off." He felt like they had just blatantly stolen the entire look and feel, the very soul of his Macintosh.
But Bill Gates, he had this devastatingly cool reply. He supposedly said, "Well, Steve, I think it's more like we both had this rich neighbor named Xerox PARC." Oof. It's one of the most legendary lines in tech history. He was basically reminding Jobs that, hey, neither of us invented this stuff. We both just peeked over the fence at our rich neighbor's place, Xerox, and now we're just trying to bring that idea to the world.
And this right here reveals Microsoft's true genius. While Apple was busy building this beautiful, perfect, but totally closed garden, Microsoft had a completely different strategy. They focused on compatibility, making sure their software could run on pretty much any PC. They signed deals with dozens of hardware makers, and they just kept improving, iterating year after year after year. They weren't building a garden. They were building a sprawling, open city that anyone could move into.
And man, was it a long, slow climb. You can see it right here. Windows 1.0 and 85, poor sales, a total failure. Windows 2.0 and 87, a little better, a modest improvement. But then came Windows 3.0 in 1990, and that was the one. It was finally good enough. It was polished, it was powerful, and it sold millions of copies. It was the moment that proved Microsoft's patient, long-game strategy was absolutely right.
But if Windows 3.0 was the breakthrough, the real knockout punch came in 1995. I mean, this was the moment Windows stopped being this little program that ran on top of DOS and became the operating system. For hundreds of millions of people around the globe, Windows 95 simply was the personal computer.
And it introduced these things that we totally take for granted today, but they were revolutionary back then. The Start menu, the taskbar for switching between programs, plug and play so you didn't have to be a computer scientist to add a new printer. These innovations made computers so much easier to use, and they just cemented the whole Windows look and feel into the public's mind forever.
So, we're at the epilogue, the empire's legacy, how Windows maintained its dominance. Because you see, the huge launch of Windows 95 wasn't the end of the story, oh no. It was the beginning of an empire that would dominate the world of personal computing for decades.
And that empire really did endure. Just think about it. You had the legendary stability of Windows XP. I mean, businesses ran on the thing for more than a decade. Then you had the super clean, user-friendly design of Windows 7, which so many people still love. And then the big move to try and unify everything, PCs, tablets, phones, with Windows 10. Through every single one of these steps, Microsoft just kept adapting and cementing its place as the default way the world used a computer.
So when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway? The lesson here is that this whole tech race, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And victory doesn't always go to the pioneer who had the prettiest first product. A lot of the time, it goes to the competitor who is just relentless, persistent, and has the most open and adaptable strategy.
And that leaves us with this huge, fascinating question. What really matters more in the long run? Is it pure innovation, being that brilliant person who first sees the future, or is it execution, being the relentless strategist who actually delivers that future to millions and millions of people? As the story of Windows shows us, the answer, well, it's not so simple, is it?